Welcome to Vivid Verses. If our words resonate with you, please subscribe, tap the like, and share your thoughts and your feelings in the comments. Now let's begin. You heard the rumors in the break room, and you saw that she's blocked on my socials. You want to know if I snapped? I didn't snap. Snapping implies a loss of emotional control, a momentary lapse in judgment caused by stress. This was a correction, a necessary excision of a liability. To understand a decision, you have to understand the theater of war we were operating in. You don't fire a partner because they burned the toast. You fire them because they compromised the mission. The target was Marcus Thorne. You know the name. CEO of Apex Logistics. The man doesn't just move freight, he moves economies. We've been trying to land the acquisition of his European subsidiary for 8 months. The deal was valued at $450 million. My commission on that keeps me in the black for the next 5 years. Thorne is old school. He doesn't trust contracts. He trusts character. He believes that a man's personal life is a reflection of his professional discipline. If your house is in disorder, he assumes your ledger is too. He looks for cracks. He pokes at them to see if the structure holds. He is a man who treats a dinner reservation like a deposition. I spent 6 months getting to the table. 6 months of due diligence, forensic accounting, and late-night conference calls with Berlin to ensure the labor unions wouldn't strike the moment ink hit paper. I had the technical side locked down. The numbers were bulletproof. But with Thorne, the numbers are just the ante to play the hand. The game is the man. The closing dinner was at the Avery. Tuesday night. The guest list was tight. Me, Isabella, my senior partner Sterling, and Thorne. I prepped Isabella for 3 days. This wasn't a casual request. I gave her the dossier. I walked her through Thorne's background. West Point, 2 divorces, 0 tolerance for triviality. I explained the strategy. We were to operate as a unit. We project stability, competence, and unity. I told her specifically, this isn't a date. This is an interview. Thorne is looking for a reason to say no. Don't give him one. She rolled her eyes at the briefing. She called me intense. She said, Hudson, I know how to eat dinner. I'm not a child. She missed the point. I wasn't worried about her table manners. I was worried about her need for validation. Isabella functions on a high-frequency emotional wavelength. If the spotlight drifts off her for too long, she creates a disruption to bring it back. In a social setting with friends, it's charmingly chaotic, the life of the party. In a negotiation with Marcus Thorne, it's a security risk. We arrived at 7 p.m. The logistics were smooth. Valet, coat check, table location, everything was optimal. Thorne was already there, drinking a scotch neat. He tracks punctuality. Being on time is late. Being early is on time. We were early. The first 90 minutes were solid. I was managing the flow of information. Thorne was grilling me on the risk assessments for the German labor unions. I was parrying everything he threw at me. Data, precedent, strategy. I was in the zone. Sterling was sitting back, watching me work, only chiming in to reinforce my points. It was going exactly according to the flow chart. Isabella was doing her job. She was engaging, smiling, laughing at Thorne's dry anecdotes about supply chains in the 90s. She looked the part. Elegant, supportive, the perfect counterpart to a rising executive. Then the dynamic shifted. We were waiting for the entrees, duck breast for Thorne, the risotto for Isabella. The business talk lulled. Thorne leaned back, his eyes drilling into me. He decided to switch from technical to personal. He wanted to see who I was behind the suit. He wanted to see if the discipline was innate or performed. You're a precise man, Hudson, Thorne said. Very calibrated. I'm curious. Were you always this structured? Or did you have to learn it the hard way? This was the trap. He was fishing for a sob story or a confession of weakness. He wanted to know if I was a grinder or a natural. I had the answer ready. The standard narrative, I had good mentors, Marcus. I learned early that details matter. It was a grind in the beginning, but discipline is a muscle. You train it until it holds weight. I started to say it. I got as far as I had good mentors. Isabella cut the line. She put her hand on my forearm. It looked affectionate to the table. To me, it felt like a clamp. She leaned in, intercepting Thorne's gaze. "Oh, please," she said. Her voice was pitched slightly too high. "He makes it sound so noble. Marcus, you should have seen him 5 years ago." Hudson was a complete disaster. The air left the immediate vicinity of the table. I stopped moving. I didn't turn to her. I kept my eyes on Thorne, assessing the damage. Thorne paused, his glass halfway to his mouth. He loves this. He loves seeing the cracks. He loves watching a subordinate lose control of his environment. Isabella didn't read the room. She thought she had the floor. She thought she was bonding. She thought that by lowering my status, she was raising her own intimacy with the client. He was living in the shoebox apartment in Queens, she continued, ramping up the energy, wearing suits that were 2 sizes too big. He barely knew which fork to use. Honestly, he was such a mess before I fixed him. She laughed. It was a performance laugh. He's lucky to be where he is. Without my polish, he'd still be pushing paper in a basement somewhere. I basically built him from scratch. Let's analyze the data she just put on the table. First, she claimed I was professionally inept until she intervened. Second, she claimed my current success is a result of her influence, not my skill. Third, she framed herself as the architect and me as the project. She was engaging in a dominance display. She felt the conversation moving over her head into the realm of high finance where she couldn't compete, so she tried to climb on top of me to get back to eye level. She was signaling to Thorne, he's not the alpha. I am. I control him. If I laughed, I validated the frame. I would look like a henpecked subordinate who accepts disrespect to keep the peace. Thorne would never trust me with a $450 million acquisition if I couldn't handle a girlfriend with a glass of wine. A man who cannot govern his own table cannot govern a merger. If I got angry, I looked volatile. I looked insecure. Thorne would see a man who could be baited. I had to dismantle the attack without detonating the room. I went dark. I placed my fork down. Softly. No clatter. I turned my head slowly and locked eyes with Isabella. I stripped all emotion from my face. No annoyance, no anger, no pleading. Just flat, dead neutrality. It's the look I use when a server crashes or a deal falls through. It's the look of processing a problem. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2 seconds, for seconds. It became physical. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the clinking glass, the chatter seemed to drop away. Sterling shifted in his seat, looking at his water glass, praying I wouldn't make a scene. Thorne watched, unblinking. He was grading me. Isabella's smile faltered. The social pressure was crushing her. She looked at Thorne, then Sterling, then back to me. She realized she was alone. The validation she sought wasn't there. "Isabella," I said. My voice was quiet, monotone. "Explain to the table why you feel the need to disrespect me in front of my peers." She blinked. She physically recoiled. She isn't used to real-time audit. She's used to me smoothing things over, used to the good boyfriend routine where I swallow the insult to avoid the fight. "God, Hudson," she stammered, offering a nervous, jagged laugh. "It was just a joke. You have no sense of humor. Minimization. Gaslighting. Standard defensive protocols." I didn't break eye contact. I didn't blink. "Humor is funny," I said. "That was a derogatory fabrication meant to lower my status to elevate your own. It didn't work, but it did reveal a great deal about your character." I held her gaze for another 3 seconds. I watched the realization hit her. I wasn't fighting as a boyfriend. I was fighting as an entity protecting its interests. Her face went blotchy red. She looked down at her lap. I didn't mean it like that, she mumbled. I didn't accept the retreat. I ignored it. I turned my head back to Thorn. I picked up my fork. The transition was instant. As I was saying regarding the union risks, I said, resuming the exact cadence I had used before the interruption. The German Labor Board is shifting toward localized compliance, which actually benefits our timeline. Thorne stared at me. For a moment, I thought he might push it. Then a slow nod. He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a predator recognizing another predator. Localized compliance, Thorne repeated. Smart. Go on. The rest of the dinner was a masterclass in exclusion. Isabella sat there. She was a ghost. She picked at her risotto. She drank 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio in 20 minutes. I didn't look at her. I didn't speak to her. I didn't pass her the salt. I engaged Sterling. I engaged Thorne. We mapped out the entire Q3 strategy. By the time the espresso came, the deal was effectively closed. Thorne shook my hand at the valet stand and told me legal would send the papers in the morning. He leaned in close before getting into his Maybach. Good handle, Hudson. You keep your house in order. He wasn't talking about the merger. I walked back to the valet. Isabella was standing there, arms crossed, shivering in the cool air. She looked small. The car, I told the valet. We got in. I drove. She lasted until the on-ramp of the I-95 before she broke. You humiliated me, she said. Her voice was shaking. I kept the car in the center lane. Cruise control at 65. I corrected you. You made me look like an idiot in front of your boss. You made me look pathetic. You attempted to castrate me socially in front of a client, I said. I stopped you. The humiliation you feel is the recoil from your own weapon. I was just trying to be part of the conversation. I felt left out. So you decided to torch my credibility to warm your hands? That's not a partner. That's a saboteur. Saboteur? Hudson, I love you. How can you use words like that? I signaled for the exit. The blinker clicked. Rhythmic. Logical. Love is a behavior, Isabella, not a sentiment. What you did tonight was not the behavior of an ally. It was the behavior of a competitor. And I don't sleep with competitors. She started crying. Loud, ugly sobbing. It filled the cabin. I turned on the radio. Low volume. Classical. It provided a noise floor to drown out the chaos. We pulled into the driveway. I killed the engine. The silence of the garage was heavy. I don't build a life with saboteurs, I said. She wiped her eyes, mascara smearing on her cheek. What does that mean? It means you need to pack a bag. You're kicking me out? Tonight? Over a joke. It wasn't a joke. We've established that. I opened the door. I have a merger to execute starting at 7 a.m. I need focus. I cannot have an adversary in my house. I am not your adversary. Tonight you were, and the risk assessment suggests you will be again the next time you feel insecure. I went inside. I bypassed the living room. I went to the bedroom, took off my suit, and hung it up. I brushed my teeth. She followed me around, crying, throwing clothes into a duffel bag. She was making a production of it, slamming drawers, waiting for me to crack, waiting for me to grab her and say, no, don't go, I'm sorry, I was just stressed. I sat in the armchair by the window and checked the Nikkei opening numbers on my phone. I'm leaving, she announced from the doorway. She wanted a reaction. I called you an Uber, I said, not looking up. It's 2 minutes out. She slammed the front door so hard the windows rattled. I went downstairs. I locked the deadbolt. I armed the security system. The panel chirped. System armed. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of ice water, and stood in the dark. That was 3 weeks ago. You're asking about the quiet. You're asking how I can just sit here, cold, and recount the end of a 2-year relationship like I'm reading a quarterly earnings report. It's because you're looking at the relationship as an emotional investment. I am looking at it as a structural component of my life. When a load-bearing wall develops a crack, you don't paint over it. You don't hope it gets better. You replace it, or the roof comes down. The days following the dinner required a high degree of operational security. I knew Isabella's pattern. She moves through stages: shock, then bargaining, then rage. I needed to be ahead of the curve on all three. The next morning, 6:30 a.m., I was at my desk. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew. I needed those 2 hours of silence to review the closing documents from Thorne's legal team. I couldn't afford a single clerical error. Sterling walked in at 8:15. He looked tired. He had likely been up late worrying about whether the tension at dinner had spooked Thorne. He stood in my doorway, holding 2 coffees. He offered me one. "Hudson," he said. He sat down, not in his usual chair, but the one further back. He was testing the temperature. "About last night." "Isabella." "Handled," I said. I didn't look up from the screen. "I'm reviewing the indemnity clause on page 40. They added a stipulation about the pension fund liability." Sterling paused. He was waiting for the emotional debrief. He wanted to know if I was okay, if I was sleeping on the couch, if there was drama. "She's gone," I said, finally looking at him. "We're focused on the closing. The distraction has been removed." Sterling looked at me for a long moment. He's a good man, but he operates on a different frequency. He prioritizes harmony. I prioritize results. He nodded slowly. He set the coffee down. "Right," he said. "The pension fund. Talk to me." He didn't bring her up again. He didn't have to. By cutting her loose immediately, I signaled to the firm that nothing, absolutely nothing, comes before the objective. If I had stayed with her, even for a week, Sterling would have looked at me and seen a man who tolerates sabotage. He would have questioned my judgment on every decision moving forward. The social fallout was messy, eh? Isabella didn't go quietly. She went to the couples dinner group chat. You know the one. 6 couples, heavy on the brunch photos and the vacation planning. She spun the narrative within hours. I didn't read the texts. I saw the notifications stacking up on my phone while I was in a meeting with the compliance officers. "Hudson, how could you?" From Sarah. "We need to talk," from Mike. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. In crisis management, there's a technique called starving the fire. If you engage with a false narrative, you give it oxygen. You validate it as a topic worthy of debate. If you ignore it, it burns itself out. I archived the chat. I blocked Isabella's number. I set my social media to private. Isabella tried to breach the perimeter on day 3. I received an email to my work address. The subject line was closure. "I'm sorry. I was drunk. I was nervous around your boss. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we please talk? I left my charger at your place." It wasn't about the charger. The charger costs $20. It was a token of reentry, a reason to be in the same room. I didn't reply. I asked my assistant, Karen, to courier a box of her remaining items to her sister's address. I included the charger. I included the books she left on the nightstand. I included the earrings she left in the bathroom. I treated it like a severance package. Clean, documented, final. Day 7 was the test. I was at the gym. 8 p.m. I was on the bench press mid-set. I saw her reflection in the mirror. She wasn't a member, which meant she had bought a day pass just to access the floor. She was wearing the workout gear I bought her. She looked good. Sad, vulnerable, but good. She stood near the water cooler, waiting for me to make eye contact. She knew my schedule. She knew I lifted on Thursdays. This is the moment where most men fold. They see the woman they loved looking regretful, and the biology takes over. The memories of the good times, the weekends in the Hamptons, the shared jokes, rush in. They think, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe she learned her lesson. I racked the weight. I sat up. I looked at her. I didn't wave. I didn't frown. I looked through her as if she were a piece of gym equipment. I picked up my towel, walked past her without breaking stride, and went to the locker room. I showered, dressed, and left through the side exit. It wasn't cruelty. It was boundary enforcement. If I engaged, I would be teaching her that if she stalks me, she gets attention. You get what you tolerate. The Thorn deal closed last Friday. We met at his office in Midtown for the final signatures. The room was all glass and mahogany. The lawyers were there, shuffling papers. Thorn signed the documents with a fountain pen that probably cost more than my first car. When the room cleared, he asked me to stay. He poured 2 drinks. "You handled the transition well," Thorn said. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. "The transition?" I asked. "The girl," he said. "I heard she's out." I didn't ask how he heard. Men like Thorn have ears everywhere. "It was necessary." Thorn turned to face me. "I tested you, Hudson, at the dinner. I pushed to see if you were the kind of man who lets sentiment override logic. A lot of men in this city, they build empires, but they let their personal lives rot the foundation. They marry women who don't understand the mission. They bleed energy, try and keep everyone happy." He took a sip of his drink. "You didn't flinch. You saw the rot, and you cut it out. That's why I signed." He wasn't buying the company. He was buying the operator. I walked out of that building with a check that changed my tax bracket. I didn't call anyone to celebrate. I didn't go out for a wild night. I went home. The apartment was quiet. I ordered Thai food. I sat on the couch and watched a documentary on industrial supply chains. You look at me and you see a lonely man. You think I'm punishing myself. You think I'm suppressing some deep well of grief. I'm not. I'm analyzing the efficiency of the new system. When I was with Isabella, I spent 30% of my mental bandwidth managing her emotions. I had to audit my words to ensure I didn't trigger an insecurity. I had to mitigate her conflicts with her friends. I had to apologize for things I didn't do to avoid 3-day Cold Wars. That 30% is now available for reinvestment. I've been sleeping 6 hours a night, uninterrupted. My workout intensity is up. My focus at work is absolute. The friction is gone. Isabella was a variable I couldn't control. She was a volatility index in a portfolio that requires stability. Does it hurt? In a phantom limb sort of way, sure. There are moments, like when I see a restaurant she would have liked or hear a song she used to sing in the shower. The brain recognizes the pattern and fires the nostalgia neurons. But I treat those thoughts like spam email. I acknowledge receipt, identify them as irrelevant, and delete them. I don't open the attachment. Yesterday, a mutual friend, Dave, tried to broker a peace treaty. He caught me after a squash game. "She's really messy, man," Dave said. "She's not eating. She keeps asking what she did that was so wrong. She says you treated her like an employee you were firing." I did, I told him. "That's cold, Hudson. You guys were together for 2 years. And in one night, she demonstrated that she didn't understand who I was," I said. "She thought I was a project she had completed. She didn't respect the work. She respected the lifestyle the work provided, but she resented the discipline required to maintain it." Dave shook his head. "You can't treat people like assets and liabilities." "You can," I said. "And if you want to survive at this level, you have to." Dave walked away. He thinks I'm broken. He thinks I've lost my humanity. He's wrong. I've just optimized it. I am currently vetting a new potential partner. Not romantic. Business. A venture capital firm wants to bring me on as a consultant for their distressed assets division. They heard about the Thorn deal. They heard about the discipline. As for a romantic partner, the position is currently closed. I am not accepting applications. The vetting process for the next candidate will be more rigorous. I won't be looking for charm. I won't be looking for a spark. I will be looking for operational compatibility. I will be looking for someone who understands that in a partnership, you don't compete for status. You align forces to secure the perimeter. Isabella wanted to be the queen who corrects the king in front of the court. She wanted the power. She forgot that the king can exile anyone, at any time for treason. The silence in this house isn't empty, my friend. It's heavy. It's heavy with peace. And that is a commodity I am not willing to trade for a little bit of noise. So no, I didn't snap. I woke up. Now, are we ordering another round? Or do you have somewhere to be? I have a 5 a.m. call with Tokyo. Efficiency, remember? Thank you for listening. That brings today's story to a close. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. See you next time.